do some introductions and play MC. The award that Lou Seno is going to be getting today, the FAA's Master Pilot Award, is very prestigious. They've been giving them out since 2004, and just over 2,200 people have successfully earned one. Some names you might recognize, like Neil Armstrong and Arnold Palmer, the golfer, Chuck Yeager, Arnie Zimmerman. Arnie's here today. In fact, they're listed on the FAA's webpage alphabetically, so Arnie is on the same page as Chuck Yeager, and Yeager should be proud. And Gene Littlefield from Plainfield used to be an air show pilot, flying wing walking act with his wife. Anyhow, Lou is welcomed into a very prestigious fraternity. Let me introduce a young fellow from the FAA, Sam Heater. He's from the combined Midwest DuPage and South Bend Flight Standards District Office. He's in charge of the FAST team, the FAA safety program, and he will make the presentation.
Thank you, Jim. What Jim neglected to say is he's also a recipient of the Master Pilot Award. So. Okay. I have just a little short video here we'll show, and then I'm going to go through some slides, and then we'll do the actual presentation. Welcome to today's presentation of the Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award. Orville and Wilbur Wright were engineers who founded the Wright Cycle Company in Dayton, Ohio in 1892. While the bicycle business kept money coming in, they began to experiment with kites, gliders, and other machines, always with a desire to create a powered machine that one day would carry man aloft. Their first successful flight, with Orville at the controls, took place at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina on December 17, 1903. The plane covered 120 feet in about 12 seconds. A short flight, but enough to make history. Others had flown in balloons and gliders, but the Wrights' creation was the first in a manned, motor-powered, heavier-than-air vehicle. Over the next few years, the Wrights refined their design and sold their first airplane to the United States Signal Corps, a division of the U.S. Army. In 1908 and 1909, they traveled to Europe to demonstrate the flyer and returned to Dayton, Ohio as heroes. They would go on to manufacture their airplanes, train pilots at the Wright School of Aviation, and defend their patent. Along with other pioneers of aviation like Glenn Curtiss, Henry Farman, Bessie Coleman, Catherine Stetson, and Charles Lindbergh, the Wright brothers became the first generation of aviators. The Wright brothers became our first flight instructors and taught the rest of the world how to fly. The second generation of flyers took to the skies in the late 1940s and early 1950s, and it's been more than 50 years since they began flying. The Wright brothers Master Pilot Award is given by the Federal Aviation Administration in recognition of those pilots who have demonstrated professionalism, skill, and aviation expertise, as was first established by Orville and Wilbur Wright. The award recognizes the lifetime accomplishments of certificated pilots who've been a part of aviation for at least 50 years. To qualify for the Wright Brothers Award, a person must be a U.S. citizen and have at least 50 years of U.S. piloting experience since the date of their first solo. The person must have held a U.S. Civil Aviation Authority, or FAA, pilot certificate with 50 or more years of civil flying experience. Up to 20 years of U.S. military flying experience may be credited. The person's pilot records must show an attitude of compliance and safety throughout their flying career. Today,
again, welcome everyone. As Jim mentioned, my name is Sam Heater. I'm the FAA Safety Team Program Manager for South Bend and DuPage. Been knocking around airports my whole life. My dad was a pilot. I grew up in aviation. And I've had a very, very good career. I've flown corporate, flown airline, flight instructor, charter, was an FBO manager, and I've been with the FAA now just about 5 years. I say all that to say this, that of all the things I've done in my career, these presentations are the highlight. We've been like Louis, Arnie Zimmerman, or Jim, though he's back there somewhere. But these people were our predecessors in aviation. They blazed the path for us. And we'll see in some of the photos that you look at the airplanes that are around us, whether it's the Falcon, the King Air, the B-17 outside, the equipment, the avionics, and just the technology that was available back then. It was far, far different than we have today. So, we'll look at a little bit of Lou's past and his history. I must say, I just met Lou this morning, but I was just amazed at his history after going through some photos and putting this presentation together. I feel like I've known him my whole life. So let's look at a little bit of his history. His first flight was on June 30th, 1948. So it's 64 years that he's been flying, not 50. Nice yellow Cub. I think all Cubs are yellow, or supposed to be anyway. He soloed shortly thereafter, July 20. I got my dates wrong here. I just realized that. 26, 1948. Apologize for that. 10.2 hours. How many folks solo today in that short a time? I did look up the VIN number on that aircraft. It's no longer registered, so I thought to see if it was still around. Maybe I could get a recent photo of it, but it's not there. Private pilot certificate, 1949. Continued on, got his commercial in 1951. Flight instructor, 1953. Instrument rating in 1978. Among some of the affiliations he has, he's a very low number EA, member 1472. Member of the Antique Classic Division. And he has an autographed membership card by Paul Oberezny. Member of the OX5 Club. Some of you younger folks you'll have to ask if you don't know what that is. Cross and Cockade, the Vintage Aero Club, Midwest chapter of the Antique Aero Club, and of AOPA. Lou was gracious enough to send me a CD that they had made several years ago, and I have taken some of the photos out of that and put them in a little presentation here. It talks about his aviation history. Like most of us that love aviation, we weren't paying a lot of attention in high school. And Lou's no different. Senior class, he was drawing pictures. You could tell where his heart and his mind was. Spent 37 months in the U.S. Army Air Force, B-24 crew chief. And according to his paths, that was in the India theater of the war. Did you fly the hump? Okay. That aircraft was supposedly used there. So, B-24 was taken, that's in C-109, that picture. Almost a little over 3 years active duty. June 30th, 1948, we fly. Took advantage of the GI Bill that was offered to all the veterans coming home. Looks like we're coming full circle. We may have one of these again for us. We may have to have an airman identification card. 1952. PT-23. I like this one. On December 22nd, he took his flight instructor check in this aircraft. I've flown around here on December 22nd. It's pretty cold. At least this one had a canopy. I don't know how much heat it had in it. None? And were you in the back seat?
What's funny about this particular airplane, when I was going for my CFI reading, instructor reading, the examiner in the back we're going through all the maneuvers. He says to me, "Can you spin this thing?" In those days, we had to learn how to do spins. So we had to go rent a parachute and go through all that. And I said to him, "Left or right?" He says, "I believe you, let's go home." So I knew I made it.
Smart examiner. Established a flying club, air coupe, tri-pacer, and a cub. And as usual, sounds like he started the club, but he also took over all the duties. He was president and also the instructor on all 3 aircraft. This is where it all began. Paul Beresny with the Baby Ace, Mechanics Illustrated, started the EAA movement, building aircraft, early 50s. And so Lou and his family followed along, started working on their own aircraft in 1959. It's all hand-built. There were no kit-built aircraft back then. It's like certainly a labor of love. It took them several years. Single-place airplane. First flight in 1961, so 2 years it took them to build the aircraft. I like that.
One of my good suppliers saw the airplane. He said, "With all the parasite drag you've got on this airplane, it's only nothing but a perfumed pig." So it was his responsibility. So I had a cartoonist do all that, and we painted that on the tail.
One of the things I noticed as I was developing this presentation was Lou always wanted to share aviation. So he took that single-seat Corbin Baby Ace and converted it into a 2-seat aircraft. Now he was able to take rides. And he mentions in his resume that he submitted for this award that he was pretty much the start of the first Young Eagles. So over almost 50 years ago, he was starting the Young Eagle flights, and we're still continuing today. Of course, in his primary business, not building airplanes, but he was tasked with designing and making the jumpsuits for the Red Devils.
We were in the clothing business, actually the formal wear business, and Tom Poberesny and Gene Susie and Charlie Edler flew into Brookridge so we could measure them for their first jumpsuits. And there they are right there. And we made them, they were all red to match the airplanes. And they had their, these are all the Pitts airplanes they flew. Then of course, then they switched to the Christian Eagle.
So those airplanes now are hanging in the EA Museum at Oshkosh. A little slight there towards Mayor Daley, but then well deserved. Rough looking crowd here. Sir, you shouldn't have spoken in front of the airplane. Of course, those of us that are young enough or old enough to remember, Oshkosh, before it became Oshkosh, was Rockford. So that was the EA fly-in. So, okay. Thought this was interesting. Flew into the Park racetrack. How many airplanes did you fly in there?
This was a show at Arlington Racetrack for antique cars and antique airplanes. And we got permission from the FAA to fly there. We landed on the longest parking rod they had. And my two sons were fighting. I had to fly one in with the airplane and then fly one back out with the other son. So, and there they were on the far right. But that was Arlington Racetrack, which of course is not there anymore.